Hey everyone, it's Jen again. Hope you're having a good week. I'm happy to report that my week was pretty good. There was a lot that was kind of going on with work and at home, so I didn't get ahead of schedule like I would have liked. So, going into my last week of scheduled development for the endings is a little bit more down to the wire than I would like, but I think I'm still on track to finish according to my own goals. So I'm excited. And yeah, sometimes we need a little fire under our feet. So we'll see how I'm feeling by the end of this week, but I'm still pretty confident. I haven't had a whole lot to talk about development wise with working on the endings, I feel like, in a while. Um, that's really just, I think, the nature of game development is that a lot of it is just not all that interesting or different. A lot of it is like pretty tedious and mundane and unremarkable. So that's just where I've been, especially when it comes to any of the more polishing type stages of the game. So I'm I'm looking forward to the end of the week and the end of development on Arcane Dice Wars to get started on the new project. And there's a few other things that I'd like to explore that I've been wanting to kind of dabble in for a while. So I'm giving myself the rest of the month permission to just kind of explore some other mediums. Sometimes I like to just switch gears and work on something a little more crafty. In the past, that's been like sewing projects or sometimes just other types of crafting projects. There's something just like more tangible about having like physical objects in your hands, even when it's just like printed from digital materials. I don't know how to describe it other than it's satisfying. So I'll be sharing some of the stuff that I do then, probably later on in the month, just because, yeah, I'd like to stay in touch and, maybe it would give some of you guys some ideas too. I think it's like not a bad idea to explore different related hobbies when you're working on something that's as, I guess, labor intensive as game development or like comics or animation like I did in the past. Um, it's just there's something that I don't know if it like resets in my brain or something. Makes it feel a little bit more fresh going into it after I've like been working in a different medium. I think that oftentimes, at least here, if somebody's like feeling depressed or what you would call like being in a rut, developing a new hobby or trying something new can often help like kind of alleviate that sense of like feeling like you're in a rut or feeling like you're in a monotonous kind of like task. I don't run into that feeling as much with like game development, but sometimes I do miss like just kind of exploring like other little like more I don't want to say simple, but less time consuming hobbies. So yeah, I'm gonna take a little bit of a break to switch gears and make some little fun, probably arcane dice related, just little crafts, and as a way of sort of like celebrating finishing that, and as well as like do some like more concept stuff with my new project. I'm gonna try to stop myself from jumping straight into it because I want to give myself a little time to think out my intentions more thoroughly before I like get into a more commitment style of development, because I do have a tendency of just like rushing straight ahead. And then a lot of like what I do is like maybe adapted from things that I should have fleshed out more deeply before I started with like the thinking of like, oh, I can always go back and fix it later, or I can always go back and edit it later. And then you just get so you get so much momentum that even though I should have gone back and refined some basic foundations of the idea, I instead kept going forward because it was so exciting to keep going forward. Then I found myself committed to things that, yeah, I probably should have gone back and like fleshed out before I had like moved straight forward. I think I mentioned before though that that's kind of like that, that balance that I'm trying to find is like, do I keep moving ahead and just like kind of getting that idea out while striking while the iron is hot, and just accepting that it's not going to be without flaws. I mean, it's not going to be without flaws anyways, so might as well just go on and get it out, and then look at it in hindsight and move on to the next project, and try to course correct from there. Maybe that would seem like a very some people would think that that would be like kind of a waste of time, but I never see things as a waste of time if I'm enjoying myself, because I mean, if you can enjoy yourself and it's not hurting anybody and it's giving you a lot of self-satisfaction in your life, then I don't see how that can be a waste of time. I think that's a really good use of time, and I would like to spend more of my time doing things on this earth that I enjoy doing. Okay, with that said, I thought this week I could talk a little bit about this concept of authority. Is that the right term? Authorial authority. It sounds like really weird coming out my tongue, so I don't know what the correct terminology for it is, but this idea that like what the author says is like the ultimate authority on any given thing. And as a consumer of literature and games and art, I've never really like thought of, I guess, given that much credence to this idea that like the author is the final word on anything, because I've always seen like art and stories as being something that is interpreted, like it's subjective to me, unless it's something that's as I guess academic as like some type of scientific literature that's based purely on like observation without any like interpretation to it. Unless that is what we're talking about, I feel like there's really not that much authority that the author has. Like, they can have all these different intentions in their art and writing, but to me, at the end of the day, if somebody chooses to interpret it a different way, I'm just happy that they connected with it, that they read this content, they took in the art to the extent that they formed an opinion. So I was thinking about this recently because I had been asked a few questions about my character and my worlds, and I had answers for them because these were things that I had thought about, but sometimes I think I wonder if it's good for me to answer the question if it wasn't explicitly said in the work itself. I don't really think my intention behind it matters all that much. Maybe this is a bit more nuanced, like I shouldn't say it that way. Having intentionality like matters when you're creating and writing, but whether or not that intention is interpreted the way that you wanted, at least for me as an artist, I don't care. Once it kind of like leaves my head and my hands, I guess, however people want to interpret it, I'm just happy that they interpret it, that they have thoughts about it. So it would never like offend me personally if somebody like had come to a different conclusion than what I intended. The only time I think that it would that being misinterpreted bothers me is like when people attribute like ill intent on my part that wasn't intended, which doesn't tend to usually happen in my writing or my art. It's more something that would like be like I did something and then somebody for whatever reason decided to be completely uncharitable about like what I said or did and made all these assumptions about me meaning something behind what I said or did that I didn't say or do. Those are the types of things I guess that I would feel like I need to defend myself and like try to appeal my case, because I would feel that like I guess I didn't communicate my actions and my thoughts properly, because now you're making a judgment about me as a person that I don't feel is who I am or what I'm trying to do, and I'd like to give myself the opportunity to try and appeal my case. But when it comes to like fictional works and artistic works, I guess we all have like a part of ourselves that we put into our artistic works, but that is a certain level of obfuscation that, because it's not directly me, it's not directly based on like my thoughts, feelings, and actions, it's more of like my interpretation of like concepts in the world, that it's okay in my mind for somebody to see my deconstruction and reconstruction of these different concepts and see it a different way than I do. Like, I think it's more interesting than anything else, and I would probably prefer for people to interpret a character differently than if they all interpreted the character the same. I like that there's room for interpretation. So I don't know if at the end of the day it's a good thing or a bad thing that authors and artists are so much more accessible than they were in the past. That if you have a question about an author's or artist's intent, you can just like post online and that author or artist can like answer you, because I don't want to be the authority on how people interpret my stories and my art. I like sharing and I like talking about it, but I want to preface that it's always just my intention, and that I don't mind, or I should say I welcome other people to interpret things differently than how I might have intended it to be. I think that's interesting. I think that's one of the interesting things about like communicating through art and stories, is that, you know, it's eye-opening to hear how other people can see the same thing, I guess the same object, and still take something different away from it. I'm not interested in like convincing people of like my opinion of something. Like, I don't mind sharing, because I do actually have very strong opinions about a lot of art and stories, but I don't care if people share my opinion or not. I like the really thin asparagus, you like the really thick asparagus. I can't understand what's good about the thick asparagus, because I really don't like how the texture is. But if you like thick asparagus, who am I to tell you that the thick asparagus is inferior to the thin asparagus? That's just my personal preference. And yeah, I guess if you like thick asparagus, you can tell me the reasons why. And I can believe you, but it probably won't change the fact that I've never had like really thick asparagus prepared in any particular way that I liked. Maybe it's not always a matter of taste. Maybe it's something that you see in the art and story that feels very objective. Like the author says in this paragraph that the character did XYZ. Therefore, it is canonical that the character is XYZ. But to me, words are still pretty open to interpretation. And there's a lot of things that could have been implied. That maybe even if what they did seemed very cut and dry and their motivations of the characters was very cut and dry, there still could be room that such a thing could have been done ironically, or the character could have felt conflicted about what they did and maybe is so good at masking, because that is also part of their character, that that it still wasn't an accurate reflection of like who they are and the way that this person interpreted it. Or that, you know, people do things all the time that are contradictory, or maybe antithetical or paradoxical to like what it is at their core, and they don't even realize it. So it makes sense to me that characters could also be capable of doing that as well. There's just so much nuance that I have a hard time even feeling that my interpretation could be the only interpretation, that I don't see the merit to trying to convince somebody otherwise. I don't know. Again, share your thoughts with me if you're passionate about any particular characters and stories. Let me know, like, why, so I can better understand. Because I think it's interesting. And I'm still debating on whether or not, like, how I feel about answering questions. Should I feel reluctant to answer questions when people ask me about things that are not in the story, but like my intentions behind it? I mean, I think I don't hesitate in the sense that I'm not, I'm flattered that they even like care to ask me about it. So I want to answer the question, but sometimes I wonder in hindsight, like, oh, should I have disclosed so much information about like what I was thinking when like I didn't portray half of the stuff I was thinking about it? I don't know. Alright, well, take care, have a good week, wish me luck in this final sprint to the finish line, and don't forget to enjoy the process. Bye now.